Before we get into the tutorial proper, let's begin with a brief overview of the problems that we're looking at. We're discussing source journalist communications, where you have someone with information that they'd like to get to the journalist over here, but they have to transit the internet somehow, which is an untrusted environment, particularly for email, which is unencrypted by default. Any router you cross could be monitored by an intelligence agency or other adversary, a random hacker. So could any endpoints on the way there, a mail server or a service provider such as Gmail. And aside on that is if the journalist uses a webmail service personally, or it's provisioned by their the company, that can be plain text. That email can always be retrieved later on via subpoena or some other mechanism, legal or illegal, instead of catching it during transit. So that's doubly dangerous than if it's on the journalist's home PC. But the solution to that is to actually encrypt the message. Now, one of the problems with encryption typically is requires a shared secret, a form of key or password that goes between the journalist and the source. But if the source sends an encrypted file across the internet to the journalist that says, hey, here's an encrypted file, the password is cheesecake, the internet's going to know the password was cheesecake in transit. So public key encryption, such as GPG, allows the journalist to publish a key that anyone can have based on the design of the algorithm, and it doesn't provide any advantage to the adversary, because the source actually has something called a private key of his own that the journalist doesn't need any knowledge of, that'll allow him to encrypt a message specifically to the journalist. He can then send his message that would look like this, which is obviously a bad idea, and make it look more like this. And then he'll send it across the internet along with a copy of his public key so the journalist can respond. And when it arrives at the journalist, he can decrypt it at his leisure, see exactly what he was saying, and it's entirely secure with some of the typical algorithms like RSA that are used by GPG. They've run basically cracking challenges, a mathematical factorializing challenge since 1991. It ended in 2007 with no one who's actually claimed the prizes for key sizes that are commonly seen, and it has never been broken at typical key lengths, which means that over the course of the last 20 years, it's had an unbroken record of security success. It's been peer-reviewed by leading mathematicians, so that's a solid margin of security and reasonable to rely on that. You can still have problems with GPG if your certificate, if not your public key, but something paired with it called a private key, is lost, say at airport security, GCHQ in the UK. Somebody takes your laptop, gains access to it, steals your certificate, and then they also compromise the passphrase, the password that you use to secure that certificate. Then they can read anything that was encrypted. But obviously that requires a lot more effort than simply monitoring